I'm having a bit of a sort out of my classical vinyl here. A few years ago, I bought, back in my eBay days when I was pretty active, I bought a collection or two. Kind of had this great desire to fill out all the gaps in my classical collection, which kind of started around 1974. And what I'm finding is that I've just got so many multiple versions of the famous pieces, and I'm kind of they're all just thrown into these IKEA cabinets a long time ago in any sort of order. So what I've done is I've put them into alphabetical order, and the idea is I'm going to work from A to Z, stripping out all the duplicates and pretty much all of the unknown recordings, the unknown versions, and so on and so forth. So I want to try and retain the really good stuff. Still got a huge classical collection on CD, and I've toyed with the idea of getting rid of the classical vinyl, all bar a few favourite pieces, and that's still possibly on the agenda. But at this particular point, I'm just going to thin this out, and I'm going to donate to the kind of recycling centre here all of the classical vinyl that I'm just simply not playing anymore. And some I never did. So that's the plan. It's a shame, I think back 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, you could advertise a collection on eBay, and there'd be a queue at the door. A lot of people were hoovering up a lot of vinyl. When I go on there, I think maybe it's because of Discogs and so on, but as I go on there occasionally these days, I just tend to find that there's really not a lot going on. You see individual LPs being advertised for what seem to be silly prices or hopelessly optimistic prices, but I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm just going to donate this vinyl here. Over here, that's basically a lot of my rock and pop and some jazz and so on and so forth. So I've got to the point now where I'm doing S. So I've done everything up to S, and so far I've managed to build up a little bit of a pile that are definitely going to go, and before I do the actual proper cull. So we'll see how I get on in due course. Anyway, in the meantime, I'll going to share for you my August haul. What albums I've been buying in August on vinyl. So I'll see you in a minute. Right, let's talk about the albums that I've purchased in August. Now, there's been quite a few, so I'm going to kind of rattle through them. I haven't listened to them all from front to back because this month or August I had trips to Newcastle, trips to Germany, and I've not been able to get around to all of them, but I've sampled all of them at the very, very least. So I'm going to start with 3 soundtracks. Now, I do like my soundtracks, so I like my classical music. I do like soundtracks, modern soundtracks, because if you go back to the 50s and the 60s, and maybe the 40s, the soundtracks were all rousing, big orchestras, big climaxes. It was like classical music, but imagine the classical symphony where the final movement, where it all comes together and there's big crashing melodies and chords and so on. That's what a lot of soundtracks were like in the 40s, 50s and 60s. The modern soundtrack is much more subtle. It's more, in my view, tends to be more of an accompaniment to the movie, enhancing the atmosphere. So there's a lot of atmospherics in modern soundtracks, and I do like those loops and sound effects along the way. Anyway, so the first soundtrack that I bought this last month was War Machine by Nick Cave and Warren Ellis. Now, I really do like Nick Cave, and in the last few albums of Nick's career, where Warren Ellis has become less a band member and more of a partner, it's really, really appealed to me. So albums like Skeleton Tree, Push the Sky Away, which I absolutely love, and Ghosteen, fantastic. And Warren Ellis has got this multi-instrumental capability and the sound effects. It's kind of beautifully described on the inside of this cover here. So that's the inside. Obviously, scenes from the series or the movie. Yeah, it's a movie. Warren Ellis, so Nick Cave plays piano, vibes, and synthesizer. Warren Ellis plays violin, guitarette. Maybe that's a ukulele thing or something, I don't know. Viola, synthesizer, loops, alto flute, and bombarde. And there's a little bit here by David Michaud, who talks about the sounds here, and kind of makes it kind of describes the sound really, really well. I spent weeks stuffed in a little loft with Nick Cave and Warren Ellis, watching up close the magic of them making music together, drank tea and ate sandwiches, listened to Skeleton Tree and watched YouTube videos. Blah, 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 blah. I witnessed, almost by accident, the pieces of this record emerge from the swamp. The tiny ideas and tinkerings, loops and doodles, dead ends and little kernels that grew and layered into something big and crazy and beautiful. Anyway, I won't read it all. I've got several of Nick Cave and Warren Ellis's film soundtracks. And to be frank, unlike the albums, Nick Cave's albums, I've not really been impressed. But what I've sampled here is really interesting, really dark and as atmospheric. All those sound effects are really fantastic. And I will admit, the first time I put this on, I listened halfway through the first side and I thought it was really good until I realised that it's 245 RPM records and not 33. So I had to put it on again and listen to it at the correct speed. And it was just as good. But there, 2 albums for the price of 1. The second soundtrack is from Rebecca by Clint Mansell. I do like Clint Mansell's. He did Moon, he did Filth. Again, very big on atmospherics, no great big orchestration, small ensembles a lot of the time. This is really beautiful though. I've not seen the movie, but I will say I have read the book, of course, and the book's absolutely fantastic. But yeah, that is turning out to be a really, really good buy. Dead impressed with that. It cost me £11. Those of you who are watching how much I spend. This is slightly different. This is music from Lorne Balfe. The Wheels of Time, another Netflix thing. Oh, it's Amazon original series. So this is kind of bigger orchestra. I like Lorne Balfe because Lorne was the composer of the music for His Dark Materials, the Philip Pullman series. The author of the original books, by the way. So far, this is really good. It's bigger, it's more epic sounding, so it's deliberately designed to be more epic, whereas the other two, I wouldn't describe them as minimalist. I would say they're a little bit more restrained and atmospheric in their feel. Anyway, something completely different. I never buy Elvis Presley records, but I bought this one. And this is from Elvis in Nashville. And these appear to be kind of outtakes, where he's working with Nashville musicians, and there's a bit of studio banter in here as well. As I say, I'm not a big fan of Elvis Presley. I grew up watching his movies when I was a kid. By the time I was buying records, he was on the way out. You know, Moody Blue, and then his sad demise not long afterwards. But nevertheless, that's interesting. Elvis in the studio, much more raw, country. More organic feel to the whole thing, less showbiz. Showbiz not on show here, really, which is good. And then I decided I'm going to buy several of these albums. I'm not going to hold them all up, but this is PJ Harvey. Now, PJ Harvey, these are the demo albums. There's several of them. There's that one. Anyway, PJ Harvey. There's more. This is a good one, John Peel Sessions. And I bought this one in Hamburg last week, which is yet to be opened. The demos for the dry. PJ Harvey, reminiscent of early Patti Smith, Iggy Pop, and there's a little bit of Nick Cave in her as well, if you know what I mean. She's kind of got that raw, kind of poetic. It's not easy listening, but it's interesting. It's kind of really quite basic, and nothing kind of happens the way you expect it to happen. There's these twists and turns and these drones and the bass playing and guitar that just seems to be that dissonant, but somehow it's held all together. I haven't listened to all of these yet, obviously, because there's one that yet to be opened, but I've been very, very impressed with what I've heard so far. I've got 2 or 3 of PJ Harvey's albums in the collection already, a couple on vinyl and quite a number on CD. And these demo albums are considered to be not that different from the official releases that followed. And from what I've heard so far, they sound absolutely great. Raw as hell in a studio, maybe just her playing all the instruments, but there's something about them that is really, really alive, really good. Someone watched a video I made some time ago and said this is his favourite Coltrane album. And this is on Impulse. This is just Coltrane. I think 1961, 1962, can't remember which album. It doesn't really matter. Really impressed with this album. Another one I bought in Hamburg last week. It's kind of mellow, but not too mellow. There's something really good going on here. But it stands up with the other Coltrane albums, and I'm sure there'll be Coltrane jazz specialists who'll say this is kind of the second division. It's not really at the peak, and I'd acknowledge that. But one thing that really I noticed here is that it's early 60s and stereo, and the panning is quite stark. So on the right hand speaker you've got the drum kit, and Coltrane, instead of being in like this sound stage to the left, he's right in the left hand speaker. So the main lead instrument is kind of offset to the left hand side. It doesn't seem quite natural, but it's the sound otherwise is really, really outstanding. This one's by my second album by Barbara Acklin, 7 Days of Night, late 60s, 69 I think it is. Soul singer. It's good, but I have to say it's lovely packaging, by the way. Comes with this Brunswick inner, and if I pull out the label, how good is that label? Classic label, beautiful. Disappointing though. You can see why. I mean, the instrumentation is great, typical late 60s soul. Great instrumentation. Her voice is just not quite up there. It's just not up there with the best. But nevertheless, a decent listen. Somebody loves her and made the effort to put out her albums for today's audience, which is great. This one I know very well, but not this version. This is Tony Banks from Genesis, his first solo album called A Curious Feeling. Never really liked this album. Thought it was pretty insipid. The vocals, characterless, really, really bland. And the instrumentation, he plays a little bit of guitar, does Tony, because he's the keyboard player, of course, plays a little bit of guitar, but it's completely undistinguished as far as I'm concerned. But it's been remixed, and apparently the remix is a lot punchier, it's more dynamic. You hear more of what's in the mix, because it was kind of muddy first time round. So I've not played it yet, but I've got some hope that that's going to turn from a mediocre album into something that's worth listening to. Here by Teenage Fan Club. So if you like kind of jangly pop, Teenage Fan Club are a fantastic band. This is a 2017 album. It is just about everything that you would expect. It's quite muted. The singing is harmony singing, usually a couple of voices at the same time, with that lovely melodic kind of Beach Boys-y jangly pop going on. But the vocals seem like aging, but it's a bit weaker. It's not kind of punchy, but it's really, really pleasant. It's very, very enjoyable. Such a good band. Never seen them so far. We'll see. From Monument Records, In Dreams by Roy Orbison. Now, I've been picking up, there's any number of Roy Orbison compilations out there that many of us are familiar with. But I've been picking up in the last year or two these Monument label kind of reissues. And you get the deep cuts, you get the album as it was conceived, and you got the big hits on there. In Dreams is the one on here, of course. But you also get these songs you've never heard before, but are just as far as I can tell, of equal quality to just about anything that he's done. So these are really interesting, and the pressings are magnificent. They sound great. Fantastic. Roy Orbison in Dreams. Just a couple more. I first got into this band in the 1990s when I started on my Americana journey, and it was their breakthrough album, might have been their first, I can't remember, called The Black Light. Only got it on CD, of course, but this, I've bought multiple albums since, and this is my latest vinyl purchase, Calexico, which is the thread that keeps us. They're kind of noted for this like Americana, Tex-Mex time kind of vibe. It's almost like they're the musical equivalent of Cormac McCarthy, really. Really good, though, really good. And this is, I think this is a little bit of a departure. It's less soundscapey, it's more kind of pop songs, it's more upbeat. I think it was recorded in California. It doesn't say, it might say on the inner. But and I think they deliberately tried to create a little bit of a different sound. Maybe the core audience is not buying everything as when it's released these days. So good luck to them. Joy Burns, I think, is the guy who's the main guy behind it. Yeah, Joy Burns. He does the singing and the guitar playing and keyboards and everything. But yeah, I really like this band. Of course, never seen them because I don't think they would ever come to the UK outside of London. And finally, Peter Gabriel, PG. This is a compilation of tracks that he's released over the years for movies. It's a real mixed bag. I've not listened to this yet, although I know most of the tracks already, and I've got some of them on CD and 12-inch single. This is just basically a wash-up of an album. Just all of the tracks in one place. It's unlikely to sound good from beginning to end. It's going to be quite disjointed, but at least I've got all these tracks in one place. That'll do. It opens it, which is what closed the film Babe, or Babe 2, Pig in the City. The Book of Love is great. I know Walk Through the Fire has been around from Against All Odds, been around since the 80s. In Your Eyes, of course, as well. Yeah, that's going to be half decent, but I've said enough about that. Anyway, that's August. That's what I've been buying and listening to most of it, but not quite all of it just yet. So there you go. That's my latest update in terms of my musical appreciation. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video, which might be me talking about 1976. We'll see. See you soon. Bye-bye.